So guys, till now we have seen valid essential elements of a valid offer and acceptance. Now we are going to discuss I'm going to throw light on a very important issue, which is when the communication of an offer and acceptance is complete. When actually a contract is entered into, there's always a doubt among the students about which is the point where the communication of offer is complete or the communication of acceptance is complete. So just let us have a look. Communication of what? We can categorize it into two: communication of offer, and on the other side, communication of what? Acceptance. Communication of acceptance. Now guys, communication of offer is complete when it comes to the knowledge of the person making to whom it is made. That is, when it comes to the knowledge of the offeree. Obviously, offer is made to whom? That is offeree. And when it comes to the knowledge of the offeree, the person itself, it is communication of the offer is complete. There can be four situations. At one date, obviously the offerer drafts the letter of offer if it's via post, and then the next is when he posts it, and the third one is the date on which the offeree receives it, and the fourth one is obviously when the offeree reads it or opens it or reads it. Okay, just have a look. First date, when it is actually drafted, when offer letter is drafted. Letter is drafted. Okay, the first point. Second date is when it is posted. Posted by whom? Obviously the offerer, because he is drafting, he is making the offer, so he is going to post it. And the third one is when received by offeree. I hope you're getting my handwriting, offeree. And the fourth one is when the offer letter read by offeree. Guys, these are the four situations. Chances are there on one date offerer has drafted the letter, on the second date he has posted it. Not necessarily the same day he has drafted and same day he is posting it. Similarly, after few dates, obviously the offeree will be receiving the letter and he may read it and open it on some other date. Now, on which date, just tell me on which date the communication of offer is complete. Yes, it's complete on this third point, when received by offerer. What is important? The date of receiving is important. When the offeree receives that letter, it's not the date of opening it or reading it. That is immaterial. What is material is date of receiving, when it comes to the knowledge. And the law presumes that when the letter is received, when the offer letter is received by the offeree, it has come to the knowledge of that particular person. So the communication of offer is complete when it comes to the knowledge of offeree. So now the next comes communication of acceptance. Now again, it can be divided under two heads: against the offerer, and against acceptor. So the acceptance is going to be complete in two aspects. One is against offerer and the other one is against acceptance. So against offerer, the communication of acceptance is complete when the letter of acceptance is posted. Getting? When the letter of acceptance is posted. Okay? Posted, it means it is put into the course of transmission. If the letter of acceptance is put in course of transmission, obviously it gets out of the beyond the control of the acceptor. So it is complete as against offerer the moment it's posted. And now against acceptor, when it is received by whom? When it is received by offerer. Obviously, letter of acceptance was meant for whom? It was meant for acceptor. Okay, it was meant to reach the offerer. So the moment it is received by offerer, it gets completed. The communication of acceptance get completed against the acceptor. So guys, this was about the communication of offer and acceptance. There's nothing, just a key rule against the acceptor, against the offerer. When it is posted, it becomes against the offerer, and when it is received by offerer, it gets completed against the acceptor. And then there is a very important question which must be discussed, that can acceptance once made can be revoked. If I have accepted something and just later on, in few hours later or just one day later, I just feel that I should not have accepted it, can I revoke it? If it's via post, not it's on telephonic, obviously it's very spontaneous, the acceptance is very spontaneous. But if it's via post, then obviously I can revoke it. The acceptor is entitled to revoke it, but before it gets to your acceptance gets to into the knowledge of the offerer. So you can revoke it through any of the speedier mode. Before your acceptance actually reaches to the acceptor, you can revoke it. Okay, but in English law, there's nothing like that. Once you made your acceptance, that is final and that is irrevocable. So guys, we are actually done with the terms and elements of offer and acceptance. But yes, of course, one very important point still left to be discussed, and that is when the acceptance shall be made. Obviously, the acceptance shall be made before the lapse of actual offer. Then obviously, if I'm saying that acceptance should be made before the lapse of offer, it means there is a scope when offer can lapse. There are circumstances in which there can be lapse of the offer. Yes, that is, the conditions for the lapse of offer is provided under section 6 of this Contract Act. Where it is provided? Section 6 of Contract Act. What it provides? It provides for lapse of offer. Getting, guys? Yes, lapse of offer. What are the situations? Just have a look. We'll just have a quick we'll just enlist it. We won't go in details of this lapse of offer. Just we'll have a quick view over that. The first one is standing offer. When in standing offer can lapse, there are circumstances when standing offer can lapse, like with the lapse of time. Obviously, I have discussed that standing offer are offer for a specified period. If the period for which the offer was made has lapsed, that is for my booking with newspaper vendor was for 6 months, then after the 6 months that offer has lapsed and I need to get a fresh offer. Okay, then second one is counter offer. What was counter offer? Nothing, just instead of my original offer, somebody made a bargained, offer in return or offer some discounted price. So obviously, if I agree to sell my thing on that very discounted price in the counter offered, then obviously the first one which I offered, the original offer, lapses, and the second one, that is the counter offer, which comes into effect. Then third one is cross offer. Yes, what was that? That was actually two simultaneous offer which were made unknowingly, without the knowledge of each other, obviously. So can these two offer can have the effect? Of course not. It can only come into effect when one person opts to just ignore his offer and make acceptance for the offer of either of the party. So one, at any cost, one offer has to lapse, and then only if the person opting to lapse his offer makes an acceptance for the offer of the other party, then there is one offer and one acceptance, and then the lapse of one offer can make other offer a valid offer. Then the next point, the buy offeree's rejection. Obviously, I made an offer and the offeree is not satisfied and he rejects my offer. So obviously my offer is going to lapse. It won't have any effect. Then the last one, if either party to contract, that is offerer or the offeree, dies or become insane, then what happens? Nothing. There are two situations. In first situation, if the person making the acceptance is aware about the death or insanity of the party, then there is no effect of the acceptance, offer lapses. But in case the offeree is not aware about the death or insanity of the other party, and makes the acceptance, then that acceptance, unaware of the death or insanity of the other party, acceptance by the offeree is a valid acceptance, and that has to be enforced against the executor or representative of the offerer who has died or become insane. Now, yes, that's a rule that it has to be enforced against the offerer's representative. But can you think of a situation where the contracts which are to be enforced, the offer which the offerer has made and died subsequently, was of such nature that required personal skill? So can it be enforced? Not getting. Just look at an example. What happens? There is Mr. X, who is an advocate, okay? Advocate. He deals with his client, Mr. Y. Now, meanwhile, Mr. X dies, to which Mr. Y was unaware, and he transferred his fees in the account of Mr. X. Now, Mr. Y was unaware about the death of Mr. X, and so he did the payment. The acceptance is a valid one. Now what? Mr. X agreement offer is to Mr. X. Before that, Mr. X dies leaving a son behind, Z. Okay, and Z is what? A fashion designer by profession. Okay. Now technically, if I am going to enforce this offer against son of Mr. X, who is a fashion designer, now just tell me what kind of dealing to the client Y Z is going to give. What kind of designing he will do with these legal techniques? Obviously, that would be a mess. So, for this reason, the contracts which require a personal skill are not enforceable against the executors or representatives, and that even lapses. Okay, so finally we are done with offer and acceptance, and now we would come to the third point, third valid essential of making a valid contract. third element of section 10. So what we have seen, what elements we have seen till now? Yes, that has to be a bilateral agreement. That cannot be a unilateral. Next one, there has to be an agreement with a valid offer and acceptance. And till now, we reached only up to second element. Now let us focus on the third element, which talks about the consideration. What's that? Consideration. We have studied consideration. At least we just have a basic idea of what's that. But before, I would add something, that is a valid consideration. Not every consideration. There has to be a valid consideration, and that is provided under section 2D of Indian Contract Act. Now, valid consideration. What it says, it's based on a Latin maxim, that is quid pro quo. Quid pro quo. And what this Latin maxim means? Something in return. Something in return. There has to be something in apart from this offer and acceptance. There has to be something in return. That is a valid consideration to make an enforceable contract. Section 2D says what? Section 2D says what? When at the desire of the promisor. When at the desire of the promisor, the promisee or any other person. When at the desire of the promisor, the promisee or any other person agrees, acts or has acted or abstained from doing something, or does an act or abstain from doing something, and promises to act or to abstain from doing something, then this is a valid consideration. So what it says, it can be divided into, this very definition which is provided in section 2D can be divided into 3 parts. What's that? 3 parts. The first one, there has to be an act or abstinence. Obviously, there has to be an act and abstinence. The section 2D provide for itself has done act or abstain from doing something, promise to do an act or abstain from doing something. So obviously there has to be something. There can be either positive or a negative. Abstinence is your negative, as I have told you earlier also. Act, that is, if I just sold my house to some Mr. X for rupees 50,000, then rupees 50,000 is a positive consideration for me, and my house is a consideration for Mr. X. That's a valid consideration. And what about the negative consideration? Negative consideration is, suppose I took a loan from my friend of rupees 50,000, and I am not able to pay, for which my friend is going to sue me. Within a stipulated time, I didn't repay him, and he's going to sue me. Now again, I asked my friend, please don't sue me, and for that I would pay you rupees 10,000 extra apart from that 50,000. If you don't sue me, I'll pay rupees 50,000 extra, rupees 10,000 to you extra for not suing me. So this is what? A negative consideration, for not suing. I'm doing something, I'm giving a negative, I'm agreeing for something negative, negative consideration. So there has to be an act or abstinence. I'm done with this. And then it has to be moved at the desire of the promisor. What it says, it has not to be a gratuitous act. It has to be moved on desire of the promisor. Even if it's moved at the desire of the agent, it is having, obviously in contract of agency also we are having as if the work done by agent is as if done by the principal itself. So it would be having the effect of as if moved at the desire of the promisor and not any third party. Okay. Then the next element for a valid consideration is it can be moved either from a promisee or any other person. That is, guys, established principle in Indian law, unlike English law, that the consideration can be moved either from the promisee or any other party. Once consideration is moved, it is immaterial. The law does not take concern who has moved it. In English law, English common law, there is a concept of privity of consideration, and we have very good landmark judgments, two Atkinson case and Chinaya versus Ramaiah case, which we have of course dealt in details in our last module, the landmark cases, the landmark judgment sections. We won't be doing it again here right now. So the thing is, the only thing I just want to tell you right now is that privity of consideration is not a rule applied in India. Rather, in India, there is established principle that once a consideration has to be moved, and it's not material that whether who is going to move it. But in English law, consideration, privity of consideration is applied. It cannot be moved from any other party who is not party to contract. In India, of course, privity of contract is applied. Only the parties to contract can sue and not any other person. And still, this rule is also not absolute. There is exception to this rule also in case of family arrangements. If for example, in case of family arrangement, even if the even if the person is not a party to contract, mere beneficiary, he can have right to sue. Like if there is a deal of if during the partnership arrangement, if there is a deal between two brothers that they would jointly manage their mother, then obviously the mother can file a suit to sue their son in case they don't maintain their mother, the son don't maintain their mother, even though the mother was not party to that agreement, but still she was a beneficiary, and so she can file a suit. And even in case of trustees or beneficiaries, they have a right to, they are the exception to rule of privity of contract, they can have right to sue. So even privity of contract rule is not absolute, and in fact privity of consideration is not at all applicable in India. Then the next one is consideration may be past, present or future. How can be it past, present or future? Present one is very simple. I am giving you my house, you are giving me your my 5 lakh check, your 50 lakh check. Obviously 5 lakhs is too less for a house. 50 lakh check you are transferring right now, that is, a present consideration. Now the past one, suppose I am giving classes to my students in this month, and I'll be paid next month. So obviously what I gave you, my lectures or my services of classes, were the past consideration for you, for which you will make me payment later on. This is a past consideration, example of past consideration. Even the cab, the drivers of school, they take your kids in this present month, they just take money in the next month. This is also I am paying for something, consideration which I have taken already, service which I have availed already, that is a past consideration. So there's nothing so complicated in this past or present consideration. And same with future consideration. Suppose I just have completed my novel, and I decided I shall give it to my friend. I asked my friend, will you take this novel, will you buy this novel for rupees 500? She said, okay, yes, that's a good one, I will go for it. She took the novel, but she said she would pay rupees 500 to me in the next month. So obviously what? This is something future consideration. In fact, she agreed to take this novel for rupees 500 in the next month, not this month. So this is what the case of future consideration. Next, what Next is that consideration must be of some value. Some value doesn't mean that exactly if I have taken my mobile for rupees 50,000, I need to sell it for 50,000 or 40,000. It's my wish. I can even sell my valuable mobile for rupees 1,000 only. It's for the offerer to decide the consideration. It can anybody. It's like their mutual understanding what consideration that requires that it must be of some value. Valuable consideration is required, not sufficiency is required, not the adequacy. Law is not at all considered with the adequacy of consideration. Next, the sixth essential element is it has to be certain consideration. That is, if I am offering you something, there has to be certain for the price. That is not that I will give you this mobile for either rupees 50,000 or 40,000. That has to be certain, measurable. Okay, I will just leave it. I would say that I will give me your mobile, I'll pay you enough price. Then what is that enough? Is it certain? No, the consideration enough price is not certain. That is not worth measurable, and I cannot even detect it from the circumstance or any other mode. So it is required to be certain. And the last essential element is the consideration has to be real as well as legal. Real what? Real means it has to be something which is worth to be done. Like if I ask you, if you write my assignment, I'll give you a piece of moon. Can I do that? Is bringing piece of moon to you or bringing a star is a real consideration? No, of course not. Then this has to be real, and this consideration has no effect in eye of law. Moreover, it has to be legal too. Suppose if I want to get a government job and somebody says that give me rupees 5 lakhs and I'll just fix you a government job. Is this bribing of 5 lakhs a valid consideration? Of course not. It's not legal. It's of no effect in law. So guys, this was about the essential elements of valid contract. Now just one more thing from this consideration part is dealt to be discussed. That is section 25, which says no consideration means no contract. No consideration, no contract. Obviously that's an established principle, but this principle is also not absolute. We can see varieties of contract which are even valid and enforceable even without your any consideration. For example, the contracts which are entered into out of love and affection, obviously most of the time those are blood relations and family settlements. And apart from natural love and affection contract, the second was this time barred debt. Obviously, when you give a debt, there is a consideration for something, but that has to be recovered within 3 years. And after 3 years, there is no liability of the debtor or there is no relationship. There's no liability left for debtor to repay the debt because it's a time barred debt. But still, if somebody agrees, if somebody feels on the moral ground that he must repay it back and for no consideration, then there was no fresh contract to pay a time barred debt, then that repayment of time barred debt is also a valid contract and can be enforceable without a consideration. Then next one is gratuitous bailment. What's that? If I give my watch for repair, that's a paid bailment. But obviously sometimes, when my friend has given her car in servicing and she comes and takes my car to go somewhere, and then after completion of her purpose she comes and give me back the car, am I going to charge something for that car which I have given to my... Obviously, that's also a sort of bailment. She's returning me after completion of her purpose. And this is what a gratuitous bailment is. Obviously, I'm not going to charge anything. So this is also a kind of contract. She has taken my car and she has returned it back, but for no consideration. So it's a valid and enforceable one. The next one is contract of agency. What's that? Agents often contract on behalf of their principal, the master, and if it is deemed as if done by the principal itself. But there are chances where the agent has not done any effort, has not taken any effort, or has not acted some way for any consideration. They can act without any consideration, and that's a valid act done by them. And even if suppose the agent happens to be my friend and he does it on my behalf, then obviously that is also not going to be stuck down. That is a valid one. Then only just last one is gifts. Obviously a completed gifts in favor of the dear and dear ones, or anyone, that also gifts is also without consideration, and that is a valid and enforceable element. And the last one is past voluntary services. What's that past voluntary services? Past voluntary services is, suppose I just saw a boy, suppose I just left my bag somewhere in the mall and I'm just looking for it. One salesman who saw my bag took my card from that and saw my number and just called me up and handed over that bag to me. I was very happy. I got my purse, handbag, or wallet back. Then I thought I just came back home and I thought I must give some reward to that particular salesman. And then again I come back and I said, I just want to give you something. So obviously here I am, there was no contract between me and that particular person, that salesperson, to give me back my wallet or lost bag, but still he did, and I just want to give something for the past voluntary services done by him. So even if I have given him for no consideration, this just for past voluntary services, that is a valid one. So the rule that the no consideration, no contract, of course it's a established principle as per the section 25, but that is not absolute. There we can see many exceptions to it. And now we are done with the third element also, that is consideration, and we will be dealing later about the competency of parties.